Hey there guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be reading chapter 2 of the Caesar House. I mostly skimmed through the text. I did not see any warnings that I should mention. If you enjoyed the episode, please feel free to drop a like and subscribe. Enjoy the chapter. Sausage sat at the dinner table at 5. 1 hour. That seemed like enough time. 1 hour to calm his thoughts and become familiar with the chair. It was a chair, typical wooden chair, nothing out of the ordinary. A little old, in style with the feel of the house, but still sturdy and stable enough that it wouldn't annoy Sausage by shifting or creaking with every little movement. 1 hour to stare at that odd crimson wallpaper. He looked at it intently, at the pattern, until he had committed it to memory and would be able to replicate it blind. The longer he stared, the easier he found it to look at, the more that feeling of unease and discomfort disappeared. Those feelings were still present, but he no longer felt like the wallpaper assaulted his eyes with its strange pattern. Every and any unease can be brought back to the fear of the unknown. Sir Carlos's voice echoed through his mind. Eliminate the unknown element, and fear cannot exist. Sausage sighed. He missed that chicken. The door to the kitchen opened, and Emma walked past. She must have caught him from the corner of her eye as she stopped and looked at him. Hi, Sausage, she said, pulling a smile to her face. Dinner's at 6. Sausage nodded. I know. Okay, Emma said. Just making sure you knew. If you need anything, you can tell me. I'll be in the kitchen. Yeah, he said. Emma continued her way to the living room to pick up some rogue glasses that had been left by the other inhabitants. As she passed through the dining room again, Sausage spoke up again. Where can I find the glasses? Come on in, I'll show you, Emma said, walking back into the kitchen. Sausage stood up and followed her in. The smells of chicken and curry filled his nose, and Emma placed the 2 glasses in the dishwasher. When she was done loading them in, she pointed at a cabinet to her right. Over here. She pulled it open. Sausage saw enough glasses to make sure the people here would never run out of a clean glass. Do I get you a drink, or... I can do it myself, Sausage offered, and then he walked to the cabinet. He picked up a glass and filled his glass at the sink. Just a glass of water. He hadn't seen any bottled water in the fridge earlier, so he assumed the tap water here was safe to drink. Taking a first sip as he walked back into the living room, confirmed that the tap water was good here and matched the taste of the glass of water he'd received upon first entering this house. He sat down at the table again, at his spot, and noticed only 20 more minutes needed to pass before dinner was served. 20 more minutes, during which he could familiarize himself with the wallpaper even more and hopefully feel even more at ease. 5:45. The stairs groaned under the weight of someone coming down. As soon as the sound reached his ears, anxiety spiked. It didn't sound similar to when Whip climbed the stairs, so Sausage figured it had to be someone new. Someone Sausage didn't know. One of the 6, he reminded himself. 5, if he didn't count Whip. 1 out of 5 new faces. It wouldn't be so bad. Just be nice, kind but wary. A tall boy with blue hair walked into the room. His gaze landed on Sausage. He tried to smile, though the look in the boy's eyes was quite neutral. He briefly stopped when he noticed Sausage at the table. Hi, he said. My name's Scott. He tried to sound amicable. Sausage nodded at him. This was the recluse. This was the one guy he didn't need to impress. The one guy who might understand if Sausage acted like a recluse for the foreseeable future. I'm Sausage. Welcome. Thanks. That was the extent of their conversation. A little weird, but also somewhat normal. Scott didn't ask questions Sausage had prepared answers for. He didn't pry. He just continued to walk to his spot on the same side of the table as Sausage, on the far right. 2 seats separated them. Scott pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Sausage turned his attention to the wallpaper again. A silent understanding. If you don't talk, I won't either. No interaction necessary, just quiet company. Sausage could get used to that. Unfortunately, with 5 others, one of which was Flip, he was sure not everyone would behave like that. Sure enough, not much later, 2 sets of footsteps descended the stairs, accompanied by some conversation. Sausage recognized one of the voices as Flip, though the other one, a female voice, was unknown. Still, just the one new person who, by the sound of it, wasn't as taciturn as Scott. There they were, Flip and a girl that kind of looked like him. She wore a green dress with a purple jacket over it, and a braid that reached her waist. She had the same red hair and curious blue eyes as Flip, and Sausage suspected they were related. Flip raised an eyebrow when he spotted Sausage at the dinner table. "So, you're already here?" He smiled. "I thought I'd have to drag you out of your room last minute." Sausage shook his head. "There's no need." Being dragged out of the room at the last minute had all kinds of disadvantages. He would be seen as unwilling to meet the others. He would be perceived as shy, reclusive, unwilling to make connections, perceived as reluctant. He'd come in and see 5 new faces at once, all of them bombarding him with their names and the same annoying standard questions he had the answers ready for. Being early put the initiative in his camp, would be seen as proactive. He was early. He could see them all come in naturally. He could meet them one by one, or as much as that was possible, and learn a little more about them based on how they approached a new person sitting at their table. Sausage learned more about his new housemates by being early rather than being late. And Flip had misjudged the situation immediately. Another detail Sausage could learn a lot from. "That's great," Flip said, and he turned to the girl next to him. "This is Jem, my sister." Sausage nodded respectfully at her, while Jem gave him a warm smile. "Hello," she said. "It's good to meet you. I hope you've managed to settle in fine." Fine. That was the word, wasn't it? Fine. He was fine. Things were fine. He settled in fine. But it didn't really go beyond fine just yet. So he nodded once. "I did," he said, and looked at the 2. Siblings made sense. Probably twins or something. They looked too similar to not be twins. "Are you older?" Jem nodded and responded with a definite yes, while Flip shook his head and said, "Nope." They stared at each other with a gaze that said as much as, "Don't start this again." "It's Jem," Scott said without looking up from his phone. "She's older." Sausage glanced back from Scott to the siblings. Flip looked a little annoyed, but more resigned annoyed, knowing this was coming, knowing he would have to rebut himself against his false statement, knowing his plan to present himself as the oldest didn't work. "Only by a couple minutes," Flip added. "Still older," Scott said. Jem looked at her brother. "Nice try." "Thanks, I do try." Flip took a deep breath and walked around the table, sitting down next to Sausage. Jem sat across from him. Now, half of the seats on the table were filled, and Jem and Flip were talking to one another. Sausage only half paid attention. It was something about some chemistry test coming up tomorrow. Jem tried to quiz Flip, who pretended to be annoyed by the questions, yet answered each of them as correctly as he could. The glint in Jem's eyes would indicate whether he was correct or not. Though she tried to correct him when he was wrong, she stopped doing that in favor of letting him ramble on about what he believed the answer was. The door to the kitchen opened up again. "Coming through!" Out waltzed a girl with black hair carrying 8 plates and matching cutlery. She put the plates on the table with a thud in front of Sausage's nose. He glanced up from the plates to her face and was met with the widest smile he'd ever seen. "Hi," she was loud. "I'm Catherine. Welcome to the Caesar house." She extended her hand to him. He stared at He stared at it for a moment. "Thank you," he said. "I don't shake hands." She immediately pulled back. "That's okay. Can you pass the plates?" "Sure." Sausage picked up the plates, so he held 6, leaving 2 for himself and Catherine, who would be sitting across from him. She left 2 sets of cutlery for herself and Sausage, and passed the rest along to the siblings. Scott put his phone away as a plate reached him, and the conversation between Jem and Flip died down as well. Dinner was coming. Good. Sausage's stomach started to rumble. Catherine looked at the 3 still empty spots, 1 for Emma and 2 for the remaining 2 inhabitants. Where are Lizzie and Jimmy? Catherine wondered out loud. They're coming, Jem said. Jimmy wasn't feeling too well. Catherine nodded knowingly and left it at that. There wasn't much else to ask. Sausage wondered if Jimmy was ill, but dinner came. Emma carried pots and pans to the table and put them down. Cooked chicken, rice and curry, and some vegetables. As she brought these into the dining room and cleaned up her workspace in the kitchen a little, the final 2 inhabitants also arrived. The girl, Lizzie, had dyed her hair pink and was the tallest girl Sausage had ever seen. She had the physique to be a basketball player, but she didn't have the muscle mass for it. She greeted Sausage with a smile and glanced behind her to Jimmy. He seemed nervous, maybe a little pale, if this wasn't just how pale he always was. With blonde hair and brown eyes, a nervous glance that landed on Sausage. Sausage and Jimmy stared at each other for a while. Several emotions crossed his face. He's lingering longer on melancholy. While Lizzie sat down at her spot next to Jem, Jimmy gulped and shook his head and broke eye contact with Sausage. I'm not hungry, he stammered. He turned around and walked away. Jimmy. Lizzie got up, but Emma put a hand on her shoulder. I'll go talk to him, she said, while Sausage made out the creaking of the stairs. Jimmy retreated to his room. Don't wait for me. You shouldn't let it get cold. Emma followed him, taking a deep breath. It's not your fault, Flip was quick to tell Sausage. Jimmy does that sometimes. It's not your fault. No, Sausage knew it wasn't his fault. He never asked to come to the Caesar house. He never asked to live here, and as was apparent now, to replace someone who previously lived here. Someone Jimmy had been close to. It wasn't his fault, but somehow it felt like it was, only because of Jimmy's reaction. They'd get over that soon, both Sausage and Jimmy. They'd have to learn to live together anyway. Jimmy couldn't hole up in his room during dinner forever. It was awfully quiet otherwise, until Catherine stood up, took Sausage's plate, and started filling it, asking him at every step if that was enough, if he wanted a little more. Sausage started with a moderately sized meal, and thanked Catherine for serving him. She continued with everyone else, not needing to ask as much, instinctively knowing what each one of them liked. She finished with herself, and by then, everyone was already eating. It tasted good. There wasn't much else to say. He didn't hate it. He could stomach it. But he didn't particularly think it was amazing. Then again, food didn't need to be amazing. It needed to be nourishing above anything. And this meal definitely would be nourishing. Emma returned after a while. She sat down in her spot and took some dinner for herself. Jimmy's not hungry right now, she said. I'll save him a plate. Now the empty space was where Jimmy should be sitting, between Flip and Scott. Until today, that space was located at the end of the table where Sausage sat. He tried to feel what Jimmy felt, and somehow that was easier than he thought it'd be. He imagined the chair belonged to someone he knew, someone he missed. He pictured his mother, his father, Sir Carlos sitting in that chair. Though it would be harder with Sir Carlos, the comb of his head barely peeking over the edge of the table, but the example still counted. Then he imagined someone else sitting in that seat that belonged to someone he cared about, and he understood where Jimmy was coming from. Sausage said nothing. The others tried to speak, and he answered softly, but let the others do the majority of the talking. "Oh, Sausage," Catherine said eventually, when they had almost come to the end of the meal, and only a couple of bites were left on Sausage's plate. "Can I have your phone number?" "Catherine," Emma said in a motherly, semi-threatening tone that implied a "not now." "Can I have your phone number after dinner?" Catherine quickly added to the question, her piercing eyes on Sausage. How could someone watch with such intensity? "I don't have a phone," Sausage answered. Flip frowned. "Did you lose it?" "No," Sausage said. "I just don't have one." He never had one, not that he remembered anyway. He never needed one. When in danger, someone else would always have a phone on them. He could always shout for help. If he was running late, his parents would know simply because he was running late. They had every confidence that their son would be able to defend himself against any threat that came his way. Besides, a phone could only be used to track him, and that was not something that he wanted. "How am I supposed to add you to the group chat?" Catherine wondered out loud. "Maybe if we chat in person, there's no need for a group chat," Sausage suggested. "Or maybe I'll just look over Flip's shoulder." Flip nodded. "Yeah, you can do that, when I let you." Sausage was okay with that. If there was something he needed to know or was discussed through the phone, he could always look over Flip's shoulder and tell him what to type when he wanted to share a message with everyone. Not that that would happen soon, but it was nice to have the option. Then Catherine gasped. "Wait, does he have a name yet?" "Pretty sure he doesn't," Jem said before taking a sip of her drink. "Like Sausage, just a glass of water." "My name is Sausage," he said with a frown. "Or isn't that what you're talking about?" "No, it's just," Flip said, and he took a moment to suppress a burp. "We have this tradition. It's silly." "It's not silly!" Catherine raised her voice. Gosh, she was loud. "But we basically rule our own empires here," Flip explained, as if Catherine hadn't just yelled in their ears. "You know, because Caesar apparently means emperor in Latin, and I don't even remember which one of us came up with it." "I think it was Jimmy," Lizzie said. "But we gave our room, our empire, a name. That's our domain, just our rooms. For example, I rule over the gremlins. Catherine rules over the overgrown." He pointed directly at her as he spoke, and shook his head. "You should see her room. I still can't imagine how she moves around without knocking anything over. It's a literal jungle in there." "You're just not as nimble," Catherine said. "What about the rest?" Sausage asked as he glanced around the table. "Rivendell," Scott said. That was a familiar name. Sausage perked up. "Like Lord of the Rings?" "Yes." That was unexpected. Scott chose Rivendell after the Elven settlement. Sausage took note of this, though he probably shouldn't. Scott could just have enjoyed the movies or the books, or both. Still, it maybe was worth exploring just how deep that reference ran. "The Crystal Cliffs," Jem added to the list. "Ocean Empire," Lizzie said, "and Jimmy's is called the Cod Empire." And Scott spoke again, quieter, a mumble, one Sausage couldn't quite hear, maybe the name of another empire. Lizzie, who had definitely heard it, looked more reserved for a second, allowing herself to feel sad for that 1 second. The name of the empire of the guy who Sausage had replaced, no doubt. But Sausage hadn't caught the name, and Scott might not realize as Sausage heard the mumbling, so he said nothing. "And now," Flip said, seemingly not having heard Scott, "we're waiting for you to come up with a name." He looked at Sausage expectantly. "Can I think about it?" Sausage asked. Flip nodded. "Sure. Then I'll think about it." Sausage said, The more time he had to pick out the name for his faux empire, the better it would be.